Hello and welcome to this mini masterclass with Jeremy Heimans. We're delighted to have Jeremy with us. He's a world-renowned campaigning guru. He's best known perhaps as the co-author of the book New Power. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Purpose, a fantastic organization that helps organizations harness new power for changing the world. Prior to that, he's done a whole host of amazing things. He set up a VAS, which is the world's biggest online movement. And amongst other things, he's also been described as the world's most influential Australian. So amazing to have you with us, Jeremy. Real pleasure. And so New Power is all about peer-driven power. It's about open and participatory power. It's what's behind Facebook and Uber and social movements like Black Lives Matter and Me Too, and lots of other extraordinary change happening in the world right now. So my question is, how can organizations capture this new power to make the world a better place?
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you. It's great to be with you, Ollie. I think, new power is not the kind of power that you can hoard up the way you might think about old power, more traditional forms of power, right? Which is something that you accumulate, that you have and others don't, based on what you know, what you own, what you control that others don't. It's a different kind of power. It's the power of the kind of the current rather than the currency. The sort of surge of energy. The more people participate, the more powerful it becomes. And so if you're an organization, the skill set is to learn how to kind of harness that energy, right? And how to harness the participatory appetites of the crowd, right? Be that your constituencies, your supporters, your employees, it depends on the organization. And that requires a different mindset and a different methodology, right? The mindset is not one of kind of capture and control, right? It's more about creating the context in which agency kind of rises. And the methodology requires you really structuring for that kind of participation.
One of the things you said was that new power isn't something that you can hoard and capture. It's a current that you need to harness. So what does that mean exactly? Why can't you hoard new power?
Well, because it's really about the agency of others, right? And if you are trying to capture something and own it and put your stamp on it or your brand on it, other people aren't gonna take that energy. One of the things we say in our work is it's not a movement unless it moves without you. My co-author is a guy called Henry Timms, and he started a movement called Giving Tuesday, which has spread to become this philanthropic movement all over the world. When he first had the idea for Giving Tuesday, he was working at a big cultural institution in New York, and he kind of came to the board with his idea, and he said, this is going to be amazing. It could really transform a culture of giving by creating this one day after the Thanksgiving kind of consumption binge in which people give back. And the first thing his board said was, well, where does our logo go? Does it go between Giving and Tuesday? Now, if he had done that, Giving Tuesday would be a tiny thing right now. And instead, it's helped to raise billions of dollars of new money. People created their own Giving Tuesday campaigns. They changed the campaigns. They adapted it. They were giving weeks instead of days. And in doing so, it became a much bigger thing.
With Purpose, when you're working with you have some amazing clients you're working with, I know, and how do you persuade them that that it's not about them, that it's about the movement?
We're also incentivized to promote our own organizations, and everybody wants to keep their own staff happy and employed, and that leads to a whole bunch of path dependency where, you may have an idea that isn't really working that well, but that's kind of what your program is funded to do. And so, part of that is breaking that down in the social sector and in the world generally requires new kinds of cooperation and different kinds of incentives, right? So to come back to the Henry example, even though it wasn't in the short-term self-interest of his organization to kind of give up, give away, make Giving Tuesday ownerless, in the end, it turned out to be very valuable to that organization in the sense that they became known as a real innovator because they were playing this catalytic role. They helped to bring this movement to thousands of organizations around the world, they then attracted a whole bunch of new funding for that organization to do more innovation.
Some of the, some of these big social movements over the last few years feel like they've sort of fizzled out a little bit, perhaps. So I'm thinking about sort of the Occupy movement, perhaps. That was an incredible moment after the economic crash, and a lot of people around the world were sympathetic with, I think, many of the views of the Occupy movement. But it seemed a bit too vague, and it seemed to lack the kind of organization and the sort of more hierarchical, top-down, getting stuff done kind of old power. Is it always the case that new power trumps old power, or sometimes it's about a mix of the two?
Yeah, look, our argument is not either new power good, old power bad, or new power trumps old power. It's just not how it works in practice. So our argument is really these are two repertoires, they're two mindsets that if you want to be effective in the 21st century, you need to learn. And often the most successful movements kind of involve a relay, a kind of cooperation between old and new power. And I think some of your critique of Occupy makes sense, right? So it's not that we should turn every movement into an institution with a membership or with, a formal apparatus behind it. But in practice, the organizations and efforts that are most effective are using both, right? And so, you think about, unfortunately, in the US, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, has been very effective, in part because it's quite effective at both new and old power. It has a big movement behind it, a lot of grassroots energy, knows how to let 1,000 flowers bloom, but it also has money and institutional power and a fearsome brand, and it combines those things. We call that kind of blended power.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for those fantastic answers. As you know, we ask everyone that comes on a mini masterclass to recommend one piece of reading or watching or listening. Is there something in particular you'd recommend to people?
Yeah, I was actually asked this question the other day and suggested a book called The New State, which was written in 1918 by a management theorist called Mary Parker Follett, who had brilliant thinking around power that helped to inform our own work on power. Why I think it's relevant is it was written at a similar moment in history, right? After a great crisis, in the wake of, the beginning of what was going to be this pandemic. And it's a really interesting to sort of think about how a set of ideas 100 years ago could be relevant to today. And I recommend that book.
Fantastic. That sounds excellent. I haven't read it, but I definitely will do. Thanks very much, Jeremy. Real pleasure to speak with you. Fantastic answers. And I would absolutely recommend that everyone reads your book, New Power, which is just a brilliant book. So thanks again for joining us, Jeremy. If you've enjoyed this film, do please share it. And if you have any questions, do just send them in. Thanks very much.